Two consecutive wins for the Duke Blue Devils football program to open up the 2023 season. Big time win on Saturday for Duke. We talk about it coming up on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils. Let's have some fun.
Hi, everybody. Dick Vitale. Hey, make sure you listen, man, to Locked On Blue Devils with J.J. Jackson. He's awesome, baby.
You are Locked On Blue Devils, your daily podcast on the Duke Blue Devils, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody, and welcome into another episode of the Locked On Blue Devils podcast. My name is J.J. Jackson, and it's so great to have you here with us on this Tuesday, September 12th, 2023. Super excited to talk about the Duke football victory this past weekend, a 42-7 win for our Duke Blue Devils. We'll discuss it on today's show with my good pal Josh Cox from Duke Football Talks Section 17 podcast. If you haven't done so already, please be sure to follow and subscribe to Locked On Blue Devils for free wherever you get your podcasts. Also, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel to watch the show daily. Without further ado, let's bring on my good friend Josh Cox, who joins us here on the program. And it's a pretty good feeling anytime you're recapping a victory, Josh. 2-0 now on the season.
It was one of those workmanly games where you knew you had to come in and just take care of business if you were Duke. And you definitely love sitting here 2-0. After that major win against Clemson, coming out 5 days later, and Duke did what they needed to do to get that 42-7 win at Wallace Wade.
Yeah, how about the short turnaround? Like, that was something that we didn't discuss as much going throughout last week, but it totally threw off the schedule. Right now, as we move forward in this week, it's going to feel like more of that normal game schedule with off days, with press conferences on days that they're supposed to be and whatnot. But when you play on Monday and the next thing you know, you got to turn around and play on Saturday, it just throws off everything.
I still think they're recovering this week from that, really. And so I believe those guys, obviously didn't get the rest they probably needed during that that week. It probably took them a day and a half to come down off of that high from that Clemson victory and then try to get refocused. And so you saw it in the first quarter and a half on this past Saturday. Seemed like the defense was a step slow. And just didn't get out to that fast start like you wanted to see. But at the end of the day, listen, if that's what it takes to you beating a Clemson team and then that's the result of it, that's okay. The schedule worked out perfectly. This was our opponent this past Saturday, and so a lot of things happened good. A lot of people got to play. A lot of guys did get to rest some throughout that game, and Duke still came out 42-7 victors.
There's certainly a conversation piece that, Duke does make the football schedule that they play in outside of the ACC games and when they're going to be played on the schedule and whatnot. But the players are not a part of those conversations in any way, shape, or form. So credit to them for figuring out a way, even when they might not have been as energized or probably fair to say as motivated when you're not taking on a top 10 team, to still come out and play the way they did, for the defense to put together that type of performance. Last week, we were trying to temper expectations and letting people know, hey, allowing the opponent to score 7 points is not going to be the norm as you progress throughout a football season. And here we are, 2 straight games, just 7 points each time. So credit to the defense for keeping that average the same. I
mean, incredible, really. If you look at it as a whole, 2 games, number 9 team in the country, and then you have a much kind of lesser talented opponent. But at the end of the day, only averaging 7 points given up in the first 2 games. The Duke defense really has been a little bit of a bend don't break, even in both of those games. But at the end of the day, it's like Coach Elko said, the purpose is for them not to score. So however you make that happen is great. The purpose is for them not to put points on the board. And so Duke defense has done that. And, this past Saturday, Duke was overpowering. They were much, much bigger, stronger, and faster. And so that really helped. But hey, credit to Lafayette. I mean, their quarterback, who had only thrown for 40 yards the previous Saturday against Sacred Heart, had some incredible throws. We were joking on our podcast that released today. There were some throws where he looked like Pat Mahomes Jr., man. He was like running to his right, throwing back to his left, finding these tiny pockets and windows that were open. And so, they played well. They also came out with a good game plan, JJ, that from the very get-go, the first drive that Lafayette had, they ran the play clock all the way down to 1 second. They did that every play, just trying to slow the game down a little bit, and it worked. It worked. But at the end of the day, like you said, the Duke defense showed up, only allowed 7 points for the second straight week, and we'll see how that looks heading into Northwestern this weekend for sure.
I can't even remember who the Duke defender was at this point. Might have been Jalen Stinson, but they even had a running back who went airborne trying to jump over a Duke defender. So, yeah, they did not appear to be scared whatsoever when you're trying to make plays like that.
Yeah, that was Jalen Stinson, and okay. I was impressed with the quarterback. I was impressed with the running back for being a team that really hasn't been that good even in that FCS level. Those two guys were good, and that running back had very good vision. Obviously, some athleticism there, hopping over a defender. So it was good. It was a good game. Like I said, Duke knew what they had to do to get the win, and they only gave up 7 points doing it.
They scored 42 points, and we'll talk a little bit about that offensive performance for the Duke Blue Devils after we take our first timeout coming up here today on this episode of Locked On Blue Devils. Locked On Blue Devils here today is brought to you by our friends over at Gametime. This is absolutely the place for last-minute ticket deals. Forget planning months in advance. Gametime has deals on tickets right up to the day of the event. Get exclusive flash deals on tickets for football, basketball, baseball, concerts, comedy, theater, and so much more. The Gametime guarantee means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section and row for less, Gametime will credit you 110% of the difference. It's the fastest growing ticketing app in the country for a reason. Get images on your seat before you buy so you know exactly what to expect when you arrive. Tickets are sent directly to your phone so you never have to dig through your email. Snag the tickets without the stress with Gametime. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Gametime today. Last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed. Moving forward here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils, JJ Jackson alongside my pal Josh Cox from Duke Football Talks Section 17 podcast. You mentioned your podcast releasing today. Tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, Section 17 podcast. If you're a Duke football fan, we release weekly episodes, deep diving the previous game, results, and then looking ahead to the game coming up this weekend. And so we sat down with Dave Ennett, the play-by-play guy from Northwestern this week, talked a little Northwestern football. They're 1-1 coming into Saturday, which I'm sure we'll get to here in a second. But we did that. DukeFootballTalk.com is our website. And then anywhere you listen to podcasts, Section 17 podcast, we're also on YouTube. And so if you're a watcher more than a listener, find us there, subscribe. As JJ would say for this channel as well, subscribe, like, comment, 5-star ratings and reviews on Apple, Spotify, all that good stuff. So we appreciate the support as we try to really, honestly, our heart and our goal is to help push the Duke football program specifically where it needs to be. And so we're trying to do our best to help.
How's your energy right now? We mentioned the Duke football defense,
yeah.
And you guys are having to gear up for 3 straight games there inside Section 7. No road games yet for this Duke team. How's your energy?
I'm not going to lie. We laughed about it because the Clemson game was a Monday night, obviously. We all took that Tuesday off work just to recover because we knew no matter what happened. And so I think I got to bed at 2:30, 2:45 in the morning that morning. And so it's funny because we have our social media calendar. You understand this, JJ. We have our kind of our social media, like what we typically do on certain days. And because of the short week, all of that was messed up. We're like, we don't know when we're releasing this. We don't know when we're posting this article. We don't know when we're going to ask for this, score prediction. So we were all out of whack, man. So we are just now, we're looking forward to this Saturday. It's a 3:30 game, not too early, not too late. It's a good middle of the day. And so this should be a good one. And then obviously next weekend we'll be watching on TV because Duke goes to UConn. And so we are not making that road trip.
Yeah, that's a long way to go. So Northwestern, the opponent this upcoming Saturday for Duke. We'll get to them in just a moment. We got to talk about the offense, though. 42 points for Duke, obviously more than they scored in that opener against Clemson. We got to see Henry Belin IV play at the end of the game. So backup quarterback getting some reps there for Duke. But before I get into any of that, let's start once again with QB1. Riley Leonard sets the tone each and every game for Duke. How well did he did that this past Saturday?
Yeah, I mean, once again, it's another solid performance from Riley Leonard. Duke is one of 7 teams in college football who have not given up a sack so far this season. So shout out to that offensive line anchored by Jacob Monk and Graham Barton. We know that, but we also understand that Riley really seems to have just a cute pocket presence. Like he knows when to get rid of that football. He knows when to tuck it and run and get 2 or 3 yards instead of taking the sack or instead of throwing it away. You've probably seen it by now, but Riley was 12 for 12 throwing the football. Henry was 8 for 8 throwing the football. 20 for 20 perfect game from the quarterbacks. There was a clocking play, and I learned this week. If you clock the ball, intentionally ground it, you do not get that incompletion credited to your personal stats. It's a team stat. And so Duke did do that one time. But other than that, 20 for 20 for those quarterbacks. But Riley Leonard, once again, his numbers were not gaudy per se, but he's doing exactly what he needs to do to win these football games. And at the end of the day, if you know Riley Leonard, if you've seen any interviews with Riley Leonard, it's not about his stats and his numbers. For him, it's all about, did you put the team in a position to win? And he did do that. He took a little bit of a hit in the game. Seemed like something with his left arm. I've seen some people say maybe he got stepped on uncleated, which that can hurt pretty bad. But Henry came in, and I don't necessarily believe it was because Riley was hurt per se, but Henry did come in with some skin still left in the game. He was playing with the ones. Samir was still out there. Jordan Moore was still out there. Nicky Dalmollen's still out there. And so Henry was able to play with the ones. And once again, he looked really, really good.
Well, as we talked about, it might not have been about the stats for Riley Leonard this past week, but as Jordan Mann was talking about with us on last week's show after the Clemson game, it is absolutely about the stats for us fans when you have games against those type of opponents. So for Riley, again, great game against Clemson, but the completion percentage is not where you want it to be. 12 for 12, like we're helping that long term with that average going up for sure. So well done, Riley.
Yeah, for sure. And at the end of the day, he's such a threat, right? I mean, he's such a threat. He can move. There were a couple of plays where it looked like he was going to get bottled up, either right at the line of scrimmage or after like a 1-yard gain. And man, he's so shifty. He can get around, guys, and I just can't say enough about his skill set. I think you're starting to see for sure the eyes of scouts and people that look at the next level and the way a person's game would transition to the next level. And I think they like what they're seeing from 13 in that Duke uniform.
Yeah, keep it up because we're liking what we're seeing so far. And hopefully Riley can continue this good stretch before Duke gets back into conference play here in a few weeks. So the wide receivers were something that we talked about on the Clemson game. Haven't mentioned their performance as much here today, but both Jalen Calhoun and Jordan Moore find the end zone. What else did you make of their performance?
Well, yeah, I thought it was good for Riley to kind of build Jalen's confidence back up. Jalen had a little bit of a struggle in that Clemson game. Some false starts and the punt situation and stuff like that. And I felt like he was a little bit down on himself. And you could just see it in his body language a little bit. And so I love the fact that Riley wanted to get him involved early in that game. And then, hey, listen, we have to say something about the connection that it seems like Henry Belin has with Jordan Moore. Shout out to Kevin Johns for bringing Henry into the game and not just turning around and handing the ball off, but letting Henry throw the ball 8 times. And, he seemed to favor Jordan Moore when Jordan was on the field. And that's a good thing. And so shout out to those guys. Almost had a long touchdown there. And then a couple of, Jake Taylor was a tight end that had kind of been buried on the depth chart a little bit on the tight end position. Coach Elko mentioned in his presser earlier this week, they've moved him to wide receiver. So he's now going to be a big, tall, 6'5" wide receiver. He made a catch. And so, yeah, it was good to see that room. John Davis Robertson, Malik Bowen Sims, those types of guys. Makai Wall had got in the game early. And so that was good as well. Because, at the end of the day, you want to build your depth. And you never know in what situation you're going to find yourself where John Tavis Robertson, Malik Bowen Sims, Mekhi Wall, who kind of are that second tier, where they're going to be called upon a big third down, big fourth down, or whatever it may be. And so it's great to get those guys reps.
Super exciting to see the reps that they were able to get, to your point, and build off of this in the games and weeks to come. Running the football, I thought Duke did a really nice job in that department as well. Of course, Jordan Waters continuing to set the tone each and every week. And Jaquez Moore, a player who we're going to be talking about a whole lot this season with another big-time performance too.
Yeah, first time in Jordan Waters' career, he went over 100 yards rushing in one game. And so shout out to him, 2 touchdowns for Jordan. And then Jaquez, Jordan Waters is the kind of guy that if he sees a DB, he's just hunting him and he wants to run him over, right? Jaquez is the kind of guy that like he sees a DB and he's going to get around him. And so they're 2 different types of runners, but I think they really do complement one another well. I think it's going to be interesting to see as the season progresses if one of them kind of numbers starting to progress even more. I mean, Jordan Waters is already, I believe he's within 300 yards of his complete total from last season already. And so these guys are doing really well. We've yet to see Jalen Coleman, who was out for a second straight week with an undisclosed injury. Coach Elko mentioned that he hopes to see Jalen on the field this Saturday against Northwestern. We'll see. True freshman Peyton Jones got quite a bit of snaps. And so he's the future. We all know that. Coach Elko has been very clear. He's not redshirting him this year. He's going to play him. He's that good. And so, yeah, that running back room, we knew it was deep, right? We've talked about how deep it was all through the preseason, and we got to see it on display this past Saturday.
What else will we get to see on display this upcoming Saturday when Duke gets ready to take on Northwestern? They've got an opportunity to improve to 3-0 on the young season. Let's talk a little bit about the game plan against Northwestern and what else we might see after our final timeout here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils. Locked On Blue Devils here today is brought to you by our friends over at FanDuel. FanDuel is the absolute best. It's the #1 sports book in America, and you can get ready for the rest of this NFL season with all of their incredible offers. New customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. All customers who bet $5 will get $100 off NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. Now is the best time to join FanDuel. The app is easy to use, and you can bet on everything from spreads to player props and so much more. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and kick off the NFL season with an offer that you won't want to miss. FanDuel, the official partner of the NFL. Final few moments here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils. JJ Jackson alongside my pal Josh Cox from Duke Football Talks Section 17 podcast. Let's get to it, my friend. Northwestern coming to town. It's fun. You think about non-conference games for Duke programs, right? In basketball, we're always thinking about those games against St. John's, it feels like, Josh. And we've been on a run where we're always talking about Duke football games here against Northwestern, and we've got another one coming up on Saturday.
I believe one more season of this current contract with Northwestern, so we'll be in Evanston next season. But yeah, they've been a familiar foe for Duke, and honestly, recently here Duke's been successful against this Wildcat program. Obviously, everyone knows by now what's taken place over the last 2 or 3 months with Coach Fitzgerald being removed from his position, and then interim Coach Braun is in there now. I did not realize this. He was just hired as their defensive coordinator in the spring. And so he's not even – this is his first go-around, period, with Northwestern. So, kudos to that guy. I mean, for being a young guy, he's still the defensive coordinator, and he's the interim head coach, and it's his first time doing that. So, shout out to him. But, yeah, Duke will host Northwestern. Northwestern started their season disappointing, losing 28-7 to Rutgers. Didn't really know what to think about that game. You don't really know what to think about the first week or two, right? You're not sure who's good and who's not good. They do bounce back this past week. Home game, they beat UTEP 38-7. It was their first win since the beginning of last season. And so you never know. You never know. Duke is favored by, a large margin. It started at 18.5. I think it bumped all the way to 20 at one point. It's back down to 18.5 or 17.5, something like that. I think that's a little much. I'm thinking that line might need to be more like 13.5 at the end of the day, because this Northwestern team, gained confidence last week. And so what I do think, JJ, what I do think we're going to see from Duke this week, its first two opponents, while on the opposite end of the spectrum, you had to make a unique game plan for both of those teams. So with Clemson, you're not going to throw the ball down the field much, right? Because the athleticism of their defense, the way that their defensive line can get to the quarterback, you're really going to get the ball out of Riley's hand quickly. And we saw that. I mean, we saw him throwing the ball away some. We saw him, doing a lot of quick, outs and quick slants to receivers. Right. Then the second game, you're going to physically dominate. And so, you're going to come out and run that football. And honestly, once you get a 14, 21-point lead, you're probably not going to air raid it and go over the top with Riley, trying to hit a guy like Jordan Moore or Samir, someone like that. I do think this is the first game where you're going to see what Kevin Johns really wants from this offense. You're going to see Riley. I believe you're going to see Riley unloaded a little bit. You're going to see him throwing the ball down the field a little bit more. It's a more comparable opponent for Duke. And I'm actually really looking forward to it because, like I said, I don't feel like we really have seen the real Duke offense in week 1 or week 2 for completely different reasons. So I'm looking forward to seeing what it's really going to look like.
Yeah, I can't wait. Another chance to see the Duke team play at home before, again, closing out the non-conference play by going up to UConn in the weeks to come. So going to be a whole lot of fun to see that matchup for Duke taking on Northwestern. I feel optimistic about what they're going to be able to do. And I want to see more from the passing game. That's still something that I want to have more and more confidence each and every week. And not that we don't in the quarterback, Riley Leonard and himself, but it's just, it goes beyond the quarterback play, from the offensive line to receivers getting open and making plays. Like, we're running the football quite well if you're watching this Duke team so far this season. So let's see what this passing game is able to do, man.
And ideally, you hit the nail on the head, JJ. Ideally, because the run game is so potent, it should really open up that play action pass.
Right.
Should be able to draw a safety down, suck the linebackers in, and be able to use crossing routes, all those different things. I'm not Kevin Johns by any means, but in theory, the success of the run game should set up the success of the passing game. And so I think we're going to see it, JJ. I really do. I think we're going to see a lot more vertical passing from Duke this weekend. And I think these next 2 weeks, not only the Northwestern game, but looking ahead, as you mentioned, UConn, Duke's going to get into their rhythm on offense. And then, what's around the corner after that? It's the home game hosting Notre Dame. And if not to, I know speaking things into the universe can be bad, but I'm going to say this, if Duke just does what Duke is supposed to do, Duke should be 4-0 heading into a home matchup with Notre Dame. And that would it will be an incredible atmosphere. It will be, I believe it will be even more incredible of an atmosphere than Clemson was. So
super exciting.
Hopefully that for happens. Sure. But Duke's got to take care of Northwestern, and Duke cannot overlook Northwestern, and Duke cannot say, okay, this team has only got one win in the last 12 months. Duke's got to understand that one win came last week.
Right.
And this team, they have an interim head coach, but this as well. Oftentimes teams rally around those interim head coaches, and we saw it last year at Georgia Tech. Yep. Georgia Tech got rid of their coach, interim head coach, and they beat us. And so, Duke cannot overlook this team. Duke cannot overlook UConn, but I'm not a player. I'm not a coach. I can also look in that 2-week window, and I can say, man, if we do what we're supposed to do, that Notre Dame matchup is going to be a heck of a lot of fun.
A little easier for us to look ahead, that's for sure. Give me one more plug for the podcast, Josh.
Well, number one, we really appreciate, JJ, you having me on pretty much every week. Really do. I enjoy coming and talking this. I will personally talk basketball with JJ during basketball season. But Section 17 podcast, as of right now, is fully football. And people ask us all the time, like, hey, what about basketball? All of us are Duke basketball fans, but we cover Duke football, period. And so Section 17 podcast is really, it was just born out of guys who semi-understand football realized there was really no one talking about Duke football on the podcast scene and decided to do that. And we didn't know how we were going to meet, JJ. The origin of this, we're like, how are we going to get together every week and like record a podcast? And there was this weird thing called Zoom that we didn't know about. And COVID hits in 2020, and April of 2020 was our first episode. We quickly discovered Zoom and how easy it was, and we've been going ever since. So we're media credentialed. We'll have someone on the field every game getting photos, getting social media content. And then we do articles and podcasts and interviews and all that good stuff. So, yeah, if you like Duke football, look us up, DukeFootballTalk.com.
Go check it out. That's for sure. Well, Josh, thank you for the time today. We'll talk again soon, okay?
JJ, have a good week, man. We'll see you later.
All right, that's Josh Cox from Duke Football Talk Section 17 podcast joining us on the show today, and that's going to do it for another episode of Locked On Blue Devils. Another win for our Duke team going into the season. We're back throughout the rest of the week talking more Duke football, and of course, Duke men's basketball comes back into the conversation as well. That's going to do it for today's show. As always, go Duke. I'll talk to you tomorrow. My name is JJ Jackson. Thank you and good day.